my
And
plan.
unfortunately, I told her, asked her for the 28th. I called yesterday saying, where are you?
I know, but you look the
messed
same.
up. So I got the list today,
Same view.
but she can't fit them in tomorrow, so I have a problem. But yeah, she has her own dogs, so she walks her own dogs with you.
It's an office or an administrator.
So
Charity. But it's
it's in the house.
Well, the panels are, sometimes I can my house and panels.
Yeah.
No, I say it has.
I like my work very much. And I always paid something. I was really tired that night. But it's enjoy it again.
Okay.
You worked as an administrator.
It's just for me this time, and I'm only doing your eyes, so that's perfect. No, that's great. That's just right. It's just right. Yeah, they say that the bass or the darks are like the bass in music, that they hang it all together for you. The darks, you know, so to keep re-establishing the darks is a helpful thing, and also because watercolour dries a shade lighter. So you kind of don't be afraid when you come back and you see, you look at Lily and recognise that the hair is a lot darker or something. I wouldn't be afraid to kind of impose it on your work, you know, because it's probably dried lighter than you planned it. But we are working on the eye now, but I just thought sometimes to have a way in to the particular, it's good still to start with that kind of, you know, big marks. It's good to start with the big marks, yeah. So something, you know, that's going to be quite clear. And I think as well, I was saying it to you, Ben, there, that when you do something deep in tone out here, it gives you a license to work in the face a little bit more, with more boldness in the face too, or it lets you know what to do in the face sometimes. If there's if you set the scene by painting the darks out with the face. Okay. And there was a bit of hair. I see, sometimes the hair isn't there, is it? It's okay, I'm not talking to you there. So I don't know if the hair is always visible on the other side or not. But okay. Alright, so now, yeah, there's something about having the edge established for myself. So I want that makes me clearly know where to locate the eye. So I just want to be very clear about where the head stops back there, and the rest of the space around it starts. So I'm not lifting off what's already there. I'm just deepening the tone of what I want of the next mark. And I want to do that because I want to get forward momentum. I want to challenge myself to move forward rather than lift off and try and... Sometimes it's good to just put a bolder colour on there, and in that way everything else reads as being a bit lighter. So I'm hoping that the edge is established now by that being darker than the colour that's underneath. Okay. Then just kind of finding the line of the muscle there, the trap muscle or something, whatever it is. And then how the hair falls on the shoulder. Okay, but it's not, yeah, it's just putting something there to explain the edge. You see the ear is in here somewhere. Okay, so the eye. I'm just going to close that door. I think 15 minutes will do this now. So it's 4:45, 20 minutes I'm going to stop and turn off the thing. You want me to set an alarm? Of course you do, just in case.
Is that the phone?
15.
15.
Please, thank you. I don't know where I put my phone. Yeah, I'm just going to do the eye in 15 minutes. You know what I'm like, I find if I said 20 now, then it'll be 25. So, okay Lily, just settle it. As in find the position. It won't be, we'll negotiate. We won't negotiate, it'll be 15 minutes, that's it. Job done, as long as you're sitting still. Really, you can imagine how things can escalate at home. Okay. Alright, so the dark in the hair, I'm starting to visualise now the space that the eye is going to sit in. And it is helpful, I think, to keep moving in order that I'm not just looking at the eye. I'm finding where other things are going to support the, just to kind of let me find my way in, easing myself into the place where the eye is going to sit. So that was ultramarine blue there, and I'm using the Van Dyke Brown and ultramarine blue again in order to establish, like I said, the two directions of the eyebrow. Now when I go to paint the eye, I feel like I want to explain a little bit more clearly too the parts that will have the same depth of tone as the eye. So I might find myself like moving around a little bit. You're thinking, Sheena, there's no way this is going to be 15 minutes in that case. And even just a corner of the mouth as well could have a little bit of something deeper in tone. There's something there. And maybe the nostril. So I suppose it's a kind of similar thing to put in the darks elsewhere, that it's starting to kind of gradually, I'm finding the field within which the eye is going to emerge from, maybe. That's bad English. Okay. And I think the middle-sized brush, the half-inch brush, is a good width. Try and find a brush that's going to help you make the mark you're seeking best you can. Okay, so what I want to do now is to find, again, the shadow that sits underneath the eyebrow towards the bridge of the nose. I'm going to deepen that shadow there. So this is cadmium red. I'm looking at the colour I'm aiming for. It's not quite that bright. I'll put it in now so you know where it is. I'm thinking of the shadow that sits kind of here. It's a little bit wet when it goes hairy at the edges. It was a bit dry, so I just put some water into it so that I can spread out. Sometimes if you put the colour down and then manipulate it with the water, that's a good way of creating the shape, so that you're not setting yourself up to make exactly the shape with the mark, I think you'll find very often that you do end up manipulating the mark after it's been placed down, whether when it's dry or wet. Okay, so I'm noticing a couple of things here. From the bridge of the edge of the nose to where the eye begins, there's the width of another eye again, really. So I know that the eye sits back well into the eyebrow before it starts. It might be the inner corner of the eye might be about there. I might just indicate that with a different colour. Just use the cadmium red to indicate where the inner corner of the eye might sit. And also noticing the distance between the eyebrow and the nostril and how far down. It's about a third of the way down the inner corner of the eye. In relation to the bottom of the nose, which could have a bit of that warmth as well, why not? The bottom of the nose, and of course the mouth is that colour too, isn't it? The bottom of the nose and the eyebrow, and a third of the way down maybe it might sit. Just put a touch of it there too so that it's not looking a bit strange. Okay. So that's that. And then the second direction of the eyebrow. The thing is, the eyebrows themselves aren't going to be that dominant, but there's the light above, the light on the bone above the eyebrow is clear enough that that's allowing me to know where the eyebrow stops and the forehead, the light on the forehead begins. So I'm going to push and lift to explain that. It's really helpful when something is bright beyond it. it's helpful. What, do you want to blow your nose or something now? So having because we know that there's a cavity, even although there's a brow bone here, it's still kind of a cavity where the eye socket sits. Like, so you want to be able to find the lights where the bone is, and notice where do your best to notice where the shadow stops and the light begins. And it's not that you'll have a hard edge all around. Like, I think I could soften that a bit there actually. And I'm noticing too that there's a diagonal here, like a shadow. Do you see the edge of that shadow? Diagonally running from even below the eye there. There's a kind of a diagonal coming up. Anyway, we'll see that in a minute. So we've got the two directions of the eyebrow, and now the two directions of the eyelid are the next thing. While you're looking at the shape of the space of skin between the eye and the eyebrow. Let's see now. So I'm going to clearly establish the eyebrow, and then I'm noticing that the line of the eyelid, if I was to continue it through, would cut off just a little bit of the end of the eyebrow there. So a bit like how we kind of extend the neck and see how much of the face is sliced off on one side. I'm doing the same thing with the eye, see where we cut through the eyebrow and what kind of a slant it's at. And I'm just going to place it and stand back and see if I'm happy with the distance. I'm just noticing maybe there needed to be a bit more space between the eyebrow and the eye there. So let's just see. Not too bad, I think. I think that's okay for now. We can see, like, that's not going to be the corner of the eye because the shadow extends beyond the corner here. I hope that when I'm talking it might sound a bit nonsense, but then hopefully when you see it with what I'm trying to do, that it might make a bit more sense. So what I'm saying here is that the corner drops down below the lower lid. So the lower lid will extend kind of, there's two directions to the lower lid really. It goes down that way for a while, and then it seems to me to kind of go almost horizontally for a little bit. And I might want to put in the iris at this stage. I think it's helpful to have the iris in there to locate, just to study the shape of the iris and to have something that attaches itself to the upper lid, the upper eyelash line. So I'm going to make it dark again with the blue and the brown mixed together. And yeah, and it looks to me like the lower lid is a bit lower than the inner corner of the eye, so that's okay, but that's there. Okay. So the eyelid, and I think the dark of the eyelid is a helpful dark to find the upper eyelid. Maybe even just do something there as well as I'm working on it. And now it's almost as though the iris, it's almost like it hangs down from the upper lid. Now you might think that it looks a bit strange for a little while, but I'm just trying to find the edges where the iris meets the upper surface of the lower lid and where it attaches itself to the upper eyelid. That's the two things that I'm trying to do there really. Let's see now. Keep looking. Yeah. Okay. And then do that. I just deepen the tone there again too. And then you can find the shadow. I think the next helpful thing there might be, because you want to explain the eyeball, and just looking at your face and thinking, Evie, you're like,
Oh, no. Don't think that.
I know. That's
very relaxed.
It's like a big fat marble, isn't it?
It's in my interpretation. Yeah, the ball, and you want to be able to kind of let the skin hug it. And I think in trying to explain that big marble, that I want to try and find the shape, the shadow as it comes up to meet the upper surface of the lower lid down here. So I'm going to find the shadow there, push it up, And then also under here. And then there's this shadow where the kind of little bit stops. The shadow here stops. I don't want to make too much of that, but it's helpful to notice that there's some bit of, you know, it's darker here than it is out here. And then we just bring the kind of deepen the tone again here so that it's not quite so dramatic and a distinction between the iris and the shadows around it. Lily, what are you doing? Like, it's like the blues changed to red. Well, we need to get a heater from somewhere. Yeah, so you know the transition between the iris and the skin there isn't so clear, and I think that's helpful because we want it to undulate inwards towards the inner corner of the eye. And then maybe bring a little bit of colour into the bits that are still white, because there's nothing in here really that's as bright as the skin above and beside it. So even the white of the eye will have a value in it. But I'm putting some watered down cadmium red into the shadows just now. And then we can feed it into here as well, I think. So you can kind of soften edges once you've found them. You can let them be a bit softer afterwards again. Might bring some of that same warmth into the nostril. And then maybe the white of the eye could have a value as well, because again it's not as bright as the skin above it. But I don't want it to read as anything the same as anything that's already on there. So I'm going to use some cerulean blue just to give it, just to darken it a little bit. Will I? Or maybe I'll just lift off, I think maybe first I might just lift off a little bit of the lighter blue around the pupil. And sometimes you'll find that there's a cast shadow of the eyelid onto the upper bit of the iris. So you can see that it'll get a bit darker as it goes in under the, as it goes up here, you know, you could put a bit of shadow colour on. And I'm using the Van Dyke Brown and the Ultramarine Blue again, and just letting it drop down. And later on you can make it even more clear, the pupil, if you want to, you know. So if it's a bit fluid, like you can't be getting clarity in it if it's too wet. Okay. And then of course you bring the same colours across, you know. And I think it's always a good idea to stand well back and consider where else those colours might be located. But I think too that maybe the edge of the eyelashes could be made a little bit deeper in tone and pushed up a little bit more there, so that it reduces the volume of the white of the eye, which I do feel like I want to subdue a bit. But just kind of eating into the shape of it first. Cadmium red might be another colour that I could use to just soften the corner of the white of the eye a little bit maybe. And you know, you'll find that you can use the same colour elsewhere just to take the heat off the part you're working on too. So don't feel like you have to stay stuck with the eye the whole time.
Can you see much of the eye of the other side or not?
I can just see a little bit of it, and if there's a touch of time, sure, I might as well do some little bit there. The main thing on that side, Brenda, I'd say, is just to find the eyelash line. Like you can get away with doing very little on the other side. If you've got an eye on this side, we know that there's an eye on the other side. And you know, so keep standing back as you're working on that one, so that you know you don't do too much. So you know when you've got enough, it's just going to say, that's an eye. And you can even forget that it's an eye. Like really, to be honest, all I'm seeing there is just a kind of a shadow shape that looks a bit like that. And of course the skin above it, skin above it might be, it won't be the same colour, but you know, that'll have, be maybe a little bit darker too.
We've got less than 30 seconds left.
Okay. You know, I think you kind of get away with it even almost like that, you know, but when it's dry you could put just a tiny bit more of something dark into the upper eyelash line. I think is a good one to deepen the tone of. Yeah, and you can always carve into it after it's dry as well, so it doesn't have to be all in one go. In fact, it's good with the eye to go away from it and come back, to go away and come back and do something big with a different brush elsewhere. So thanks very much, Lily. I think that's it. I was thinking of doing this really in blue, yeah. It would have been just to inject a little bit of some value in there so that it doesn't read as being quite as bright a white as the above and below. And especially as time goes on, it may be that you might introduce something warmer into this. The light, the skin that's catching the light will often read as being warmer. So if you've got a very clean colour, you could even print an edge with a warm colour that will read as light. So the cadmium orange and the cadmium red together, watered down over the white paper, will often read as something warm. Yeah, it's kind of nice to bring that in. If you've got blue elsewhere, it's quite nice to bring in this kind of warm skin colour too. Yeah, it's all right. I think it's okay. I mean, you can decide the position of it. Maybe it could have come forward a little bit more there, but it's worth noticing how far the inner corner of the eye is from the bridge of the nose in relation to the width of the eye itself. You know, so do your measurements without getting fixated on them, and stand back as soon as you put a mark in to see, are you happy with the size of it? Believe your eyes in the end, you know. Okay. Lily, thanks very much. Great stuff.
Oh, it's not.